Welcome to Invisible, Breaking Through the Stigma of Addiction. It's a local Rogers television show where we talk about all things addiction and how it impacts the community. I'm your host, Dean Anderson, and today on the show we have two amazing people from the community who work for or part of the organization of Coast. And I'm going to introduce Tony Ruffalo? Rotulo. Oh, I said it wrong already. I'm sitting here saying it in my head, and then I say it wrong. Tony Rotulo from the Coast program. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Dean. It's a pleasure to be here.
It is my pleasure to have you here. I would like to just jump right in and get you to share some of Coast and what your role is and what it is that you do with Coast.
Of course. So Coast stands for Community Outreach and Support Team. So I'm a registered nurse. I've worked in mental health for the past 8 years, and then since the pilot of Coast started approximately a year and a half ago, I'm paired up with a London police officer, and we assess people in the community for mental health crises.
That's fantastic. So we can clearly see a need for it and why you're here on the show today. What do you think is the most important role that you would have as a Coast member?
So really the most important role is to facilitate access to healthcare. So when we assess individuals in the community, sometimes being charged or jail is not the right answer. Sometimes they need to be connected with psychiatry or with mental health or addiction services. So it's my role to fill that gap.
Okay, and how does that help the community? What's the point?
Well, I think research shows that access to healthcare can show great success in lessening symptoms and the burden of mental health and addictions on them. So we really just want to be the middle person and help connect them with the appropriate services.
And how do you play a role in regard to dealing with local police and London Police Services?
Yeah, so I'm paired up with a London police officer, and so typically referrals come in through London Police, also through CMHA as well. And so if people in the community are experiencing mental illness or addictions, sometimes they will refer them to the Coast program. So that'll be our opportunity to proactively go meet with them, assess them, and see what services, if any, they need.
Okay, so now you being paired up with the London Police, so you're a registered nurse, correct?
Indeed I am, yes.
Okay, so is that what the normal pairing is, so that the London Police are paired up with a nurse, or is it other people in the community or other services that they're paired up with?
Yeah, so the Coast team is a collaborative effort between London Police, London Paramedics, Community Mental Health Association, or CMHA, and St. Joseph's Hospital. So in addition to having registered nurses through St. Joseph's, we also have paramedics and social workers through CMHA.
Fantastic. So how would the process work? So somebody just picks up the phone and calls Coast, or does your bat phone go off and you're like, hey, we have to go on the job? How does it work? How does it collaborate to get you on to the scene of helping somebody?
Yeah, so right now, typically it's London Police and CMHA who make referrals. So London Police would become aware of them just through interactions with the public, and then CMHA, we have our crisis drop-in center and also the reach out hotline. So typically that's where we get our referrals, but if you are an individual in the community suffering from mental health or addictions and you would like additional services, you're encouraged to reach out to CMHA and they would be able to make the appropriate referral to our program.
Awesome. That's great. So what got you involved in this? When you guys started with the Coast program?
I have a strong passion for mental health and addictions work. I think there's a large stigma attached to it, and I believe that with the right treatment, people can make a full recovery. So I'm really passionate about it, and I love being in the role, and I hopefully want to break the stigma.
How does the front line work towards breaking the stigma? Like, what is it that you're doing that that breaks the stigma or helps people to get help in that very first interaction?
Yeah, so ideally what we want to do is do a thorough assessment, so a mental status exam, and we certainly don't want to force anyone to do anything. We want to work collaboratively with the client and with our community partners. And so really just kind of normalizing, their situation and what they're going through, and explaining that, perhaps what you're experiencing are symptoms that can be treated with medications or with a psychiatrist.
I like the way you use the word client opposed to, someone who's in trouble or a suspect or those type of things that when we think about police services. So when it comes to accessing services within the community, if the Coast team is on site, do you have an ability to, cut the queue, so to speak, or get people into services quicker or access things any faster than they would if they were to outreach those services on their own?
So I wouldn't say we have an opportunity to do things faster, but working in this role, it's really given me an opportunity to learn about the different resources that our community has to offer. And so by educating myself, I can make the appropriate referrals, whereas sometimes navigating the healthcare system can be challenging. So again, that's where my role is. It's to kind of fill that gap and be the middle person.
Nice. So you're a concierge of healthcare, so to speak, the guy who knows the stuff.
So to speak.
So to speak. How long have you been in the role now?
So I believe we launched approximately a year and a half ago.
Okay.
We're currently looking to secure permanent funding, but so far my experience has been wonderful. I've met some great clients and was able to network it and become aware of many wonderful community programs out there.
I love it. And so this is something that we're hoping that Invisible can help nudge some people and get people to know that it is a pilot program that is being worked through and that there's an opportunity for it to grow and to get bigger. But I want to know more about, how is it that you feel you're helping? Tell me about some of the clients that you've been working with and how you're able to, or if you have an example without breaking confidentiality of how you're able to network somebody, I would love to hear it.
Of course. So some common calls we get through London Police are, let's say an individual will be at home and they may be suffering from symptoms of a mental illness, so increased paranoia. Sometimes they may be suffering from auditory or visual hallucinations, and often when it manifests, they become quite frightened and phone London Police. And then when they do, that's when London Police would make the referral to Coast. And so, again, working with our community partners, so for example, for that individual that's having a first episode psychosis, it seems appropriate to refer them to the first episode program at LHSC, so the PEP program.
Cool, fantastic. What's the direction? What are you hoping, from your perspective, from a frontline guy's perspective, where are you hoping the direction that Coast is going to go?
So I hope that we're able to expand a little bit further. Right now, we have a very small team, and so that limits what we're capable of. So we really hope to focus on proactive work, but perhaps by expanding the team, we could do even more reactive work.
Okay, what's a small team?
So right now, essentially, there's 3 teams that work during the day. So it would be 2 during the day and 1 team during the evening. So again, that would be a police officer and a clinician paired up together. And because of our limited resources, sometimes we're not able to respond to calls. So if an officer is dealing with an individual suffering from mental health or addictions in the community, they're certainly encouraged to phone Coast. But again, because of our small team, sometimes we're not always able to respond immediately. So again, that goes back to the proactive work that we're doing, but perhaps we would be able to respond more reactively in those situations if we were to grow.
Fantastic. The small team is the funding, so we're kind of just putting some feelers out there and seeing what kind of response you're getting from the community, because I could also see where you guys could be 24/7, 7 days a week quite easily.
Absolutely. We are busy, and there's just such a great need for mental health and addiction support right now. So yes, we believe we've been well received during our pilot, and we do hope to expand and secure permanent funding.
Okay. The community, and I like the way you said, we get a call from somebody sitting in their home who might be struggling with. I think that the community looks at the mental health, we automatically think of, the person struggling in the street or the homeless person, and these are, where the Coast is being directed, right? So it's not just high acuity, it's not just people that are, homeless or dealing with that, right? Is this the experience you've had?
Yeah, that's correct. So really, we offer services to anyone experiencing mental health or addiction issues. So whether it be that person that's suffering from their first episode psychosis or someone who's dealing with homelessness and addictions, we certainly want to engage with everyone. And again, to just facilitate rapid access to healthcare.
Okay. What do you think the balance is right now? Do you think that there's a higher balance of doing work with people in the street and the homeless population, or working in the community, or would you be able to answer that?
I mean, it's kind of hard to say. I want to say it's probably split, but again, it's wherever our services are needed. So if there is a call in the police queue, we will respond to it. If someone through CMHA puts a referral in for a homeless individual or someone suffering from addictions, absolutely we'll deal with it. And again, anyone in the community is encouraged to reach out to our program. We're happy to assist you in any way that we're able to.
So from your perspective, you get to see the real front line of addiction and mental health. You get to see that it's our neighbors and our friends and our family, and it's an unbiased. A mental health and addiction is unbiased. It affects everyone equally. If you wanted to give the community some advice or something that you could say to everybody to say, hey, you know what, this is how we need to look at this and what's going on in our community, what would you say?
So I think mental illness is no different from any other illness. If you have diabetes, you get medication to treat diabetes, and it's the same with mental illness and addictions. You're not alone. There are supports available for you. Reach out for help. That's really the best message that I would give people.
What about the community? So that was, a lovely message directed to people that are struggling. What about the people that are on the outside looking in who don't understand that other people are struggling? What kind of advice would you give to the community about being more empathetic and compassionate to what's going on in our community? And I'm picking on you here. You know that I'm putting you on the spot, and I'm doing it quite intentionally because I recognize the value and how important the work that you do is. And I think your voice is very important, Tony. And I want you to even look right at the camera and just yell at people. No, I want your voice to be heard, and it's really important that people recognize that it's not what they think it is.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think it's really easy being an outsider to place judgment on people. And the truth is, no one really knows. And if someone is experiencing symptoms of mental illness, they are very, very real to them. And it's really easy to say that it's not and you're sick, but I think everyone needs to look at it and be more empathetic because you don't know what they are experiencing.
Awesome. We don't know what we don't know, and I like that you attributed it to diabetes or some other illness because it just comes from nowhere. We don't know what we're getting into. So
exactly.
And like I said, it's unbiased. So I appreciate you being on the show, Tony. Thank you very much. It's been fantastic having you here and sharing all your vast knowledge with Coast. We encourage you to come back, and we want to tell the community also to support Coast. Look and see how they can vote or do whatever it is they can to make these things get in place, because you're a conduit between mental health and police services and hospitals and all of those great things, which is completely invaluable when it comes to helping our community. So thanks again for being on the show.
Dean, thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
This is my pleasure. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Invisible. Our second guest is Danielle Zaft. Danielle is from the London Police Services and part of the Coast team, and we're super excited to have her on the show today. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I would like for you to just share your experience and what, just right out of the get-go. We already had Tony on the show from St. Joseph's, and he's able to explain some of the, the ins and outs of Coast. What I'd really like to hear, and I'm sure that our viewers would love to hear, is more about your experience with the ELP. And she's armed, everyone, just so you know. And she's got all she bought a bulletproof vest just to make sure I didn't get out of control. I'm pretty sure that's
it's to keep us safe.
It's to keep us safe.
Yeah,
absolutely. So I would love nothing more than to hear your experience and to share what it is that your role is in with Coast.
Yeah, for sure. So I am a police officer with London Police. Been with London Police for 5 years. Prior to that, I actually worked in social work for 10 years. So I had a big heart for working with individuals that were struggling or in crisis. And when this unit was announced, I did want to be a part of it and made that known. So I feel very fortunate to be part of this team. Really, like my role and the other police officers' roles on the team is really around safety and security. So we get to hang out with these awesome community partners all day and go and take, whether it's calls out of the police queue or do follow-ups or referrals that we get from different partner agencies. We get to go and support people in the community and just kind of be a bit of their bodyguard, but also being able to support individuals in a unique way, just from a policing standpoint.
So the knowledge and the know-how. So I that jumped out at me earlier when you told me about your social work background. So policing and social work combined. Tell me how that role benefits you. Where does that all interlink?
Yeah, I think there's lots of education and experience I had in my social work time that helps me better understand, like from a more trauma-informed standpoint, that individuals in crisis, whether it's with mental health or addictions, they didn't get there just kind of overnight, and that there's something underlying for them, and being able to see the person behind those things and just meet them where they're at, I think has really played a big factor for me, and I think for some of the other officers too that come with other unique experiences on the team. So
the trauma-informed approach, is there a lot of training around that? Are you doing a lot of work in regards to the trauma-informed approach with dealing with people specifically with COAST?
Yeah, so we as a COAST team had a couple of weeks of training when we started, and so we did talk about different things within specific mental health or addictions, understanding suicidal thoughts and how to keep somebody safe, all that sort of stuff. I think the trauma-informed piece, we really get educated from our community partners we're working with. They are the experts kind of in the field, and so they can share their knowledge. We see the work they do with folks, and they can let us know that what's maybe really going on for this person or what supports we might want to gear them towards. So that's been a great learning.
What do you think has been the major factor that really instigated COAST? What was the thing that got it off the ground, do you think?
I think it's something that as a police service we've wanted to see for a long time, and so sometimes it's just continuing kind of pushing that, and then we're seeing an increase in mental health, addictions, homelessness within our community, and so when that need continues to increase, and eventually people need to respond to that, and so the team was formed and able to start to address that. We're seeing increased calls, increased wait times, all that sort of thing within our community. And so this COAST was an alternative to try to address some of those underlying issues.
So some disclosures. I'm part of the mental health and advisory and addiction and advisory panel for mental health for London Police, which I'm very proud to participate in. But we talk about the subject of police being a catch-all. So people just pick up the phone and they're like, oh, there's a cat in the tree, oh, there's a this, oh, there's a that. And then, so I'd love to talk about what that role means to you as being the people call police for everything. How does COAST play a role in that?
Right, yeah, and I think because there's nowhere else for them to call. So, if you are concerned about a family member, who are you going to call if you're concerned that maybe they need to go to the hospital or they're having a mental health crisis or whatever that might be? It is 911, because right now with how the Mental Health Act is, police are the only ones that have authority to take someone to hospital if they're unwilling to go and they need to go, if they're a danger to themselves or others. So that's kind of why police still need to be at the table for some of these calls or these check welfares, that sort of thing. However, it's difficult when you have two uniformed officers showing up for someone in crisis that sometimes can make the crisis worse. And it's not because they're not kind people or anything like that, right? It's just showing up in that uniform. Whereas the COAST model allows, police are still coming, we're still showing up, but we're a little bit more approachable, we're a little bit more trained, and we're working with our community partners, like I said, are the experts, and can kind of help with de-escalation, help inform us on the best approach to support somebody.
Wonderful. The key word I heard in there was, you said uniformed officers. I'm taking note to what you're wearing today.
Yeah.
Is this your normal apparel, and tell me why?
Yeah, so part of it is, again, kind of going back to that trauma-informed piece, that not everybody has positive experiences with police, and that has, like I said, it might not have anything to do with the police presence and how they show up, but it's intimidating, right? When you have a full uniform and the vest and all of that can feel quite scary, and if you're already in crisis, it just can make it worse. So this uniform just allows a little bit softer approach. And then the same thing, with some of our training and, work with our partner, when we show up, instead of saying, I'm Constable Zaff, it's, my name's Danielle, I'm here with my social work partner, Jeremy. It just changes the whole tone, right? And so folks are like, okay, I'm not here I'm not in trouble. They're here to support me, and it just changes our interaction.
I like that you say that we're not in trouble. Me and you had a talk briefly in the green room about the idea of mental health and addiction in the past being very punitive and being something, and not that it's been strictly punitive, but the perception of, or the idea that the community have is that it's punitive, and if you're doing this, you need to be punished. How is that playing a role in what you're seeing right now?
Yeah, so we, as a team, as the officers on the Coast team, have really been given some discretion around, if charges aren't necessary or not helpful, we can overlook that piece as long as there's not a risk of safety. But it's more focusing on supporting that person. So if they're struggling with addictions, I'm not necessarily interested in what illegal substances they might have on them. I'm looking to see, how can I keep you safe? What do you need right now to start to kind of overcome this addiction and better your life? Because that's going to have way more lasting effect than me giving them a charge that frankly doesn't always go anywhere in courts, right? So it's trying to look at the bigger picture and having a more lasting effect on people.
Yeah, so I'm hearing that we want people to get help, opposed to trying to fix a solution. We call the police, or we call because we want you to come and fix something, and it's saying, you know what, let's not just try and fix your problem right now. Let's see how we can get help to be more preventative in the long-term solution of it all. And no one's going to call the police if they think they're going to be penalized because they might have some paraphernalia or whatever it might be laying around. They want to do that. Have you, I'm wondering about is it the Humanitarian Act? I'm trying to remember what it's called. I'm trying to remember. When someone has an overdose or a poisoning, if you call the police, you're not going to be charged with possession of drugs because you called the police to help them. There's a name for it. I'm trying to remember.
Because otherwise they're not going to call, right? And then runs the risk of them losing their life. So our primary goal in those calls is to save their life, not to look to lay charges.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So this kind of falls into that same category as saying, hey, you know what? We're here more of to be supportive and to be helpful and to see how we can get you to the right services and get you to the hospital, opposed to saying, we're coming here and saying, hey, what are you doing there? Right?
Yeah. Because it just adds more shame and stigma, and that's not what they need in that moment.
And you just segued perfect. You just segued perfectly. Have you done this before, Danielle? This is my next question. How does the Coast team help prevent stigma? What do you like? How are we, as a community in Coast, and more specifically your role in the LPS? Like, how does that cross over to helping break that stigma?
Again, it's similar to what we've already talked about. It's a lot in our approach with folks. I'll look for calls in the queue specifically, that especially if someone hasn't had interaction with police before, that we can be that first point of contact. We've supported individuals, elderly male with years of addiction that's never really come out and talked about it because of that shame and stigma. Us coming not in the full uniform just makes a world of difference, and be able to then do a follow-up, which our uniform officers can't do. They're just far too busy. And so we can check in with that person again in a few days and kind of help them work towards their goals. And I think that approach is huge, to just see them as a person, meet them where they're at. And then additionally to that, like helping educate our coworkers. So for me, patrol officers around you've dealt with this person X number of times and it can be frustrating, but this is what's going on for them. And so helping them understand a little bit of the bigger picture too, so that when they're going, they've got a bit more, just understanding, I guess, when they meet with that person again.
That's brilliant, really, is what it is. So the calls, to get an understanding, we talked a little bit about with Tony, but the calls would come in through LPS, and for those who don't know, LPS is London Police Services. So the calls would come into the LPS, and then you would, you said you're scrolling through the calls, so you can be selective and pick calls. Is this anywhere in the city if you just see a mental health call?
So we serve all of the city. So and I don't know if you're aware, but our police queue is quite lengthy on a given day.
I'm aware.
Yeah. So there's lots to pick from, unfortunately, in that sense, but yeah. Wow.
So then you get to collaborate then with the police officers and say that I'm going to take this call, we're going to do that. And then are you seeing an ability to collaborate with other police and being able to other uniformed police officers and being able to get them to help you and support you in all those other ways? So it's fully supported through LPS.
Yeah, and we also have secondary officers. So if I'm off on vacation or sick or anything like that, we have other officers that are trained to work Coast, so they'll fill in. But typically their primary role is patrol. So they are also an expert kind of within their own platoon, so to speak, being able to offer insight for their coworkers when they're on mental health calls and Coast isn't available. So it's kind of neat to see the snowball effect of knowledge sharing and be able to teach each other about, best way to kind of serve somebody in crisis.
Fantastic. The other officers, are they all? Do they all have similar backgrounds to you with the secondary education or working in social work or something along those lines?
They're similar. So we have one that has crisis negotiator training, so that's fantastic. Another one who worked in like social service type government work prior to, so a good understanding of the impacts of trauma and mental health and addiction, things like that. So,
do you see anything in the future with Coast being able to share your knowledge back into, so you talked about with individual officers and being able to share that, but what about sharing it back into the organization as a bigger, like, are you collecting information so that you can collaborate and say, hey, this is how we can approach these, so that so ideally we would like everybody Coast trained and all the police to be able to say, we're not just picking calls, but more people being able to face those things. Is that something that's going on?
Yeah, it's actually something in the works. One of our secondary officers have taken that on because he really feels like that would be helpful. So just kind of preparing a presentation to provide to parades when the officers start their shift, to kind of educate on specific mental illnesses that we see more prevalently in a point of crisis, and just to help the officers understand how that presents, what sort of supports a person might be looking for, knowing that it's unique for each individual we serve, but just getting a better understanding, because we're not the mental health experts as police officers, yet we're being called to be sometimes, right? So.
Yeah, I've heard it before in conversations that police are anticipated and expected to be a firefighter, a doctor, a nanny, whatever. We're calling the police, and then you're expected to have all these things. And we look at the vast amount of training that it takes just to be a police officer, yet also trying to be a first aid, a medic, social worker, and all those other things. It's very difficult. So definitely applaud the idea of being able to move that information forward and being able to get it in place. So last question I would love to ask is, what do you, for yourself, what do you think is the biggest thing that we can do to break stigma and make it not for society, but for the police themselves? How can we, because I know everybody sees the police as, this, right? What do you think we can do to break the stigma for the police?
I think it's just seeing people behind the badge, behind their crisis, right? If we kind of take off the outer layers of each of us and just recognize we're all human beings, we all have our stuff, and just meet people where they're at.
Love it. Thank you very much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. We'll be right back after this break. As we continue to learn more about addiction and time passes, we recognize that it's more deeply rooted in mental health and trauma than anything else. So if we're going to be punitive towards people for having substance use disorders or addiction, we're actually being punitive towards people with mental health and trauma. So we got to remember, and as we've said in previous episodes, these aren't bad people trying to get good. They're sick people trying to get well. And the Coast team is a great way for our community to recognize that and meet people where they're at and help them get health care, opposed to helping them have an interaction with the police in an inappropriate or unhealthy way. So we're so glad that they were on the show today. So thank you for watching. And if you see an opportunity to support the Coast team, we encourage you to do that. Thank you.